Hi everyone. So here I am, day 4 in managed isolation in Auckland. So yeah, Sunday. Sunday is usually a quiet day for me anyway, and it's been no different today. Um, I tried to sleep in, but that's a bit hard because I'm still operating. I think my body's still getting used to the time zone difference, and whilst it's only 3 hours, that seems to be enough to have thrown me out um, because I'm waking up quite early, even though um, yeah, it's 3 hours ahead. I'm still waking up early here, so I'm an early bird back in Australia. So I usually get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and so yeah, sleeping in is not something that I do very well at the best of times. And given it was Sunday, I thought I might just stay in bed for a little bit longer, but that wasn't to happen. So I went outside and went for a walk. I didn't feel like breakfast. Again, I think that's just because breakfast is being served at a time of day where I would normally still be asleep. So anyway, it's all, my body's confused, my brain's confused, time zones don't agree with me. Um, but anyway, so yeah, went outside, got some sunshine, did a little bit of reading, but I am really tired today, and I don't know if that's just the fact that I've slowed down, um, you know, from being here. I don't know if that's a case of boredom or something setting in. I don't feel bored. My brain isn't feeling bored. I'm actually really enjoying the rest. Um, I usually operate at 120 miles an hour. So actually, the forced rest is not a bad thing for me. And once I get out of here, I know I'm going to be busy with both work and spending time with mum and stuff when I head back down to Christchurch. But yeah, so nothing very exciting. The most exciting thing that's happened today is that I got the results back from my swab, my test that I had yesterday, which not unsurprisingly came back um, negative. So that's what I woke up to under my door was the paper just slid under there, just saying, it's just a tick and flick document that has my details on it and says that the result of the test was negative. So I've seen those before. I've had the test before back in Australia when I was presenting as sick. I had a cold or a flu or some horrible thing that was going around and was coughing for weeks and unable to get rid of the cough and snotty and all of those sorts of things. So I don't know what that virus was called. Nobody gave it a name, but it wasn't the coronavirus. But they made you test for coronavirus at the time anyway. Um, so yeah, so been through that before. So what I thought I might talk about today really quickly is the cost of isolation. So one of the questions that came through to me on one of the channels yesterday was, do I have to pay for isolation? If I do, how much does it cost? Did I know whether I would have to pay for isolation before I actually came? And yeah, pretty much things around that. So the first question around, what is the cost of managed isolation in New Zealand? So it's $3,100 for the first person who stays in the room, or only one person in the room. And then after that, it's $950 per additional adult, and then $475 for any children that are in the room aged between 3 and 17 years. So I keep looking down because I've actually got the form here and I'm reading it just to make sure that I get that right. There's no charge for children under the age of 3. And, I've shown photos of what my room looks like. And so I'm okay here. It's just me in my room. I travelled with three pieces of luggage. So I've got that luggage sort of stashed around all over the place, so I've got room. But I can imagine that if there was a family of 3 or 4 in a room like this, that would be really difficult. There are families staying here. Some of the rooms are bigger. I think that in the case where there are too many adults and children to fit into one room, they are spread across multiple rooms, in which case, that pricing per room applies. So it's, I'm living in the lap of luxury compared to, say some of my neighbours down the hallway, where they, have a family of 4 in one room with rollaways and things like that in there. So there's no cooking facilities as such in our room. The minibar is a very small, very, very small fridge that basically fits your milk and a couple of drinks in there. So you can't even buy stuff in. I've got a microwave in my room, and I've also got tea and coffee making facilities, and a coffee machine, like a Nespresso coffee machine, which they'll top up the pods and things if need be. So in terms of the facilities, it really is just a hotel, a standard studio hotel room that I've got. And so again, reliant on the kitchen or anything that gets ordered in as a pre-prepared meal from a food perspective. Back on that food side of things, we've finally, between the food and beverage manager, the chef, the nurse and myself, sorted out what can and can't go into my meals, and so the staff are being quite vigilant now, which is good, and I haven't had any other reactions. If you missed it, or if I didn't mention it, I had something that I was a bit suspect of, but I thought I'd eat it anyway, and all my gums swelled up and all of my glands swelled up, and so that kind of made me a bit nervous. But anyway, that's all been taken care of. Now, the other question was, other than what was the price, was did I know whether I was going to have to pay for it? So yes, I did know whether I had to pay for it or not. And whether you pay or not is very much dependent on a couple of things. So one of the things that what they've done is they've now made the call and asked the question, are you a New Zealand citizen? So the answer to that for me is, of course, yes, I'm a New Zealand citizen. I am travelling on a New Zealand passport. So tick. Will I, when did I last leave the country? So I was, I last departed New Zealand in February last year, which meant that that was a tick. That was a positive for me. And then the other thing is, am I staying here for over 90 days? And the answer to that is yes. So those were the conditions that I met in order to not have to pay for isolation, managed isolation. So I am back in New Zealand for an indefinite period of time, up to possibly 6 months, just depending on how long it takes me to take care of the matters of which I came back to look after. So I've been really lucky, but there were people I know that I had conversations with on the bus and the plane who have come back, and they're in managed isolation. They won't be, they're New Zealanders who left after before August last year, and therefore but aren't staying for less than 90 days. They've come back because they've got family members who are in the throes of passing away or who have passed away, and so they're coming back, taking care of matters, and then they're going home again. In those circumstances, people do have the opportunity to apply for an exemption. Now, the exemptions, I don't know how they work. I haven't had to apply for one. I've had the paperwork, I've seen it, or they ask you lots of questions. Why are you coming? Why do you think you're exempt? What are the circumstances that you're requesting that exemption based on, and then I guess they assess that on a number of things that I'm not privy to. So some people, there are some people who are obviously going to have to either pay for that or apply for their exemptions. And so the other question was, do I have to do managed isolation when I come back to Australia? Uh, and at this stage, who knows? So there have been what they call green flights that are supposedly direct flights from New Zealand to Australia that guaranteed to not have anybody who are transitioning from another country and who have to, who are in New Zealand for under 14 days, they haven't undertaken managed isolation here before getting on a plane to go to Australia. And so, if that flight has anybody that is just transitioning through, then that flight's deemed to be a regular flight. And when you arrive back in Australia, you still have to do your managed isolation, which my understanding is that you have to pay for. But if you can get on a green flight, and there's some contention I've been reading on the internet around whether flights are actually green or not. And there was a story I saw the other day where somebody had, there was a bunch of people who had believed that they were on a green flight. They were under the understanding that they could fly directly into Brisbane and get off the plane and that they would be okay because they were coming from New Zealand and were part of the bubble, part of the travel bubble. The One Direction travel bubble. And when they got there, they found out that the flight, in fact, wasn't a green flight. And so they were a bit surprised and certainly unprepared mentally, physically, emotionally, stuff packed in their bags, for instance, to actually go into isolation for 14 days back in Aussie. But because I'm going to be here for so long, who knows? If I was going back next week, then the answer is no. If I get on a green flight, I don't have to. I can fly directly into Brisbane, so long as I am on one of those green flights. But the way that this situation is playing out, it changes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's certainly dragged on longer than anybody has expected it to. And the rules keep changing, and the rules don't always make sense, but they are the rules. So when the time comes for me to go back to Australia, I guess there's some hoops that I'll have to jump through. One is whether, as a New Zealand citizen going back to Australia, will they let me in? Will I have to apply to come in, regardless of the fact that I have lived over there for 18 years and that my family are there and my employment is there? I still don't know actually whether I can get in, but I made the choice to come here because I needed to be back in New Zealand to take care of some things. And I ran the risk of not being able to get back into Australia and then having to deal with that. But you know what? Being stuck in New Zealand with my mother and my extended family is not a bad thing. But I can tell you that today I am somewhat missing being at home with my little immediate family, and in particularly I'm missing my moko today. I've been looking at photos of her and that's made me a little sad. But anyway, that's okay. She's all right, and I'm okay, and so is everybody over here. So, it's okay. We'll get by. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today in terms of questions to be answered. I don't know that I will be coming on every day to actually do an update, unless there's questions, unless, and obviously every couple of days just to check in and say hi and to let you know that I'm okay. Yeah, so it's all going fine. My mental health is good, my physical health is good. Tomorrow's a work day, so I will be busy. I will be, in meetings and talking to my colleagues and things like that. This afternoon, I've got a couple of electronic digital catch-ups, video calls that I'm going to have with some friends, both here in New Zealand and back in Australia. So that's quite nice. So yeah, still staying connected. And yeah, things are going well. So thanks again for popping in and for listening and for being interested. And again, if there's anything else that you are keen to find out about, I do have my little isolation manual. There's a different pack. This is my welcome pack. But yeah, I've got my little isolation manual here that I can go through and answer questions for anybody who's interested. And yeah, like I say, it's just about sharing, both what I'm going through and what other people might be experiencing in isolation as well. So yep, thanks very much, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.